Welcome to Ascend and Awaken, a life of balance. There is a quiet ache many people feel today. Even when life appears full, a sense of overload, a sense of noise without meaning, a sense of being constantly occupied, yet inwardly untouched. We scroll endlessly. We fill every pause. We rarely sit with ourselves without distraction. And yet, beneath all of this activity, something ancient still calls to the human heart: silence, solitude, simplicity. Long before modern life, a group of spiritual seekers heard this same call. They did something radical. They walked away from the world, not in rejection, but in devotion, and entered the desert. They became known as the Desert Fathers. Their lives reveal a profound truth. Sometimes, the path to God is not through addition, but through subtraction. Who were the Desert Fathers really? The Desert Fathers and Mothers emerged primarily between the 3rd and 5th centuries in Egypt, Palestine, and Syria. This was a time of great change. Christianity had moved from persecution to acceptance. Faith was becoming institutionalized. Comfort and conformity were increasing. For some, this felt like a loss of spiritual intensity. The Desert Fathers did not leave society because it was evil. They left because it was crowded with distractions. They sought a life stripped to essentials, where the soul could no longer hide behind habit, status, or routine. The desert became their teacher. Why was the desert chosen? The desert is not gentle. It offers no excess, no distraction, no illusion of control. Food is limited, shelter is minimal. The landscape is stark. The Desert Fathers chose the desert because it reflected the inner terrain of spiritual awakening. In the desert, hunger reveals attachment. Loneliness reveals dependency. Silence reveals inner noise. They understood something essential. God is not hidden by absence, but by excess. The desert removed everything unnecessary so that only truth remained. Solitude is a mirror of the soul. Solitude, as the Desert Fathers practiced it, was not peaceful at first. It was confronting. Without distraction, the monks encountered unresolved fears, repetitive thoughts, buried anger, pride, restlessness, despair. They taught that solitude does not create these struggles, it reveals them. The desert was not the problem, it was the mirror. And this is a lesson for us today. When we avoid solitude, we often avoid ourselves. The Desert Fathers treated silence not as an absence of sound, but as a spiritual presence. They believed words had power, and that unnecessary speech weakened the soul. Silence allowed them to notice subtle inner movements, observe thought without being ruled by it, rest in awareness rather than commentary. They discovered that God rarely speaks loudly. God is encountered in stillness, attentiveness, listening. Silence wasn't empty, it was inhabited. The Desert Fathers spoke often of inner struggle, what they called the passions. These weren't sins in the modern sense, they were patterns of reaction. Anger, pride, greed, fear, despair, compulsive thinking. Solitude intensified these patterns, but instead of fighting them violently, the monks practiced watchfulness, humility, patience. They learned that transformation does not come through suppression, but through awareness and surrender. What is seen clearly begins to loosen its grip. The lives of the Desert Fathers were astonishingly simple. Few possessions, repetitive routines, manual labor, prayer, rest. This simplicity was not harsh for its own sake. It was chosen. They understood that excess fragments attention. Abundance invites attachment. Simplicity creates spaciousness. What we remove often shapes us more than what we add. Simplicity freed them from constant decision-making and comparison. It returned them to presence. Solitude did not harden them, it softened them. One might expect isolation to produce harshness. The opposite happened. Many desert fathers became known for deep compassion, patience with weakness, gentleness toward others, profound wisdom. People sought them out, not for answers, but for presence. Solitude purified their hearts. They discovered that when the ego quiets, love flows more freely. True solitude does not isolate the heart, it widens it. Most of us are not called to physical deserts, but the desert fathers remind us that solitude is not about geography, it is about intentional space. An inner desert can be cultivated when we choose silence regularly, resist constant stimulation, allow boredom without fixing it, sit with discomfort without escaping. A few minutes of stillness each day can become sacred ground. God does not require distance, God requires availability. The desert fathers did not disappear forever. Many eventually returned to the community, changed. Solitude clarified what mattered, what didn't, what was essential. They returned with humility, wisdom, and compassion. The desert was not an escape from life, it was a return to truth. The desert fathers leave us with a timeless invitation. Do not be afraid of solitude. It is not abandonment, it is encounter. When we step away from noise, even briefly, we make space for something ancient and intimate. God does not shout. God does not compete for attention. God waits in the quiet. Thank you for spending this sacred time with me. If this reflection resonated, I invite you to subscribe to Ascend and Awaken for more explorations of ancient wisdom, inner peace, and spiritual simplicity. And I'd love to hear from you in the comments. Where in your life could solitude become a doorway rather than something to avoid? Peace, love, and light to you on your continual spiritual journey.